everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sunday Sit Down, the show where anything goes and nothing is left behind. I am always Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and I know that I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but one of the few things that I love about YouTube is that when it comes to live streaming, it's oh so simple and effortless. The only challenge when it comes to live streaming is just making sure that the person that you're going to have on your live stream with you is able to actually make it. Once that's done, everything is just a piece of cake. So before I officially start my new season of Up From the Underground, I am so glad to be here for the second season premiere of Sunday Sit Downs. And I'm really excited about our discussion today because I thought really long and hard about this, especially when it comes to the BookTube community. And in YouTube in general, it's not necessarily something that everybody really thinks about. We're going to be talking about YouTubers who decide to go out of their comfort zone and create their content outside of their native language. So I also have with me a fantastic booktuber in the community. When I first found her, I had to say that this woman is ballsy. She is willing to be as honest and true, even if her opinion is going to spark some controversy. And I said, this girl's going places, let me tell you. And I was right. She has more subscribers than I do at this point in time. By the time I first met her, she barely had any. So I am so glad to welcome Sophie from Sophiesticated Books onto my show today to discuss this with me. Sophie, good morning. Thank you so much for being on my show today, and I'm hoping that you're enjoying your summer.
Good morning. Yes, it's super hot outside right now. I'm really enjoying my summer so far.
Well, let me tell you, all of us up here in the United States and all of those who are in places like the UK, they are all extremely jealous of you because we are freezing our tails off right now. It is like 30-something degrees Fahrenheit. If I could give you Celsius, I could, but we're Americans. We're not good at that stuff. So it's pretty cold here, plain and simple. So I'm just glad that I've got my heat on. So I'm really glad that you came to join me today because I really wanted to get inside the head of someone who has English as their second language because you're from Argentina, your native language is Spanish, and I was really curious about how someone, regardless of what their first language is, because there's a platform here that allows for so many different languages to be spoken, and so many people create their content in their native language. But when people decide to go out of their comfort zone and say, no, I want to speak in English or another language that is more familiar to them in their vocabulary, I just want to know where they come to this decision and see what's really going in their minds. So, as always, we like to start at the beginning, at the top of this hour. And the first of 7 questions that I always ask, we're going to start with number 1, of course. How did you learn English, and is it as common in Argentina as Spanish is?
Okay, so I learned English because first of all, my father started teaching me and he started reading to me and with me every single night. And then I also go to a bilingual school where they teach both English, Spanish, and some other languages later on in the school years. But yeah, that was how I started learning. And the second question, what was the second question again?
No, it was just it's pretty much the same question. It was just like how did you learn English, and is it as common in Argentina as it is as Spanish is?
Yeah, it's actually really common in Argentina, especially, most of the schools here, there are a lot of public schools which some of them teach English and some of them don't, but the majority of schools around where I live are private schools and they all teach both languages. English is like really important in our country because besides Spanish, it's the most common language in the world, I think. And yeah, it's super common for people to speak English as well in this country.
First of all, you're absolutely right. English is the most common language in the world, followed by Spanish, and 3, just in case nobody out there knew, is Portuguese. So yeah, so that's really amazing. And that's one of the few things that I hate to take a dump on my country here, but I wish that when it comes to our educational system here in America, that we really were given more of a mandatory requirement to learn other languages out there, because it's extremely important. Because I remember when I was in college and I was learning about some of the other school systems out there, and particularly in Europe, there are some European countries that, like you, mandatorily, they take English most of the time. And when you actually speak to these people in English, they speak better English than
Yeah.
native English speakers. My cousin, after he graduated from law school, he went with his friends on a trip to Europe, and they didn't go to the typical countries like Germany or France. They actually went to Sweden, Norway, they went to the Czech Republic. And when they went to Sweden,
Yeah,
the minute
I've
someone
heard
in
that.
their party spoke in English, it was crazy how the Swedish people spoke English, and they even sounded like they came from America. That's how
Yeah,
great their English is. And
yeah.
I
In
find
Sweden,
that so
especially, I've
amazing.
heard that. Yeah, in Sweden, like everyone speaks so perfectly
It's
in English.
incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And my father works for a company. He works in the United States, but his company is originally from Japan. And when the Japanese workers come from Japan to the United States, they also speak perfect English. And it's pretty. And I'm very envious of the fact that we as Americans don't really have the requirement of learning other languages that
Yeah.
are more commonly spoken. Because yeah, in school we have the ability to take Spanish and French and whatnot, but we all sleep in class. That's just the way we are. I took Spanish for 1 year and I just couldn't do it. I just tried so hard, and it was just, I don't know what it was, and I ended up going into computer science. But that was basically me. But I do feel that learning another language is very important, and especially when I speak to people who are just so passionate about language, it makes me
Hmm.
want to learn another language at some point in time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, in Argentina, I think that it's a really big requirement because you know that, well, for example, America is a much more developed country economically. So you know that if you want to have opportunities in the outside world internationally, and you're not, like, your country is not able to maybe provide as many opportunities as the outside world can, it's a requirement for you to be able to communicate with the rest of your country. So it's really important part of the education. And maybe being in the United States, where you don't have the really big need of doing that, you don't pay as much attention to it either.
Yeah, I think it's just because of the fact that, like I said, we're very full of ourselves, most of us more than others. But it's just like when we go to another country, we are anticipating somebody that we spot on the street to actually know
Uh,
how to speak English, and that's not necessarily the right way to go about things. I also feel that when you actually learn another language for the sake of wanting to make sure that you know it, and you go to another country and you actually speak the native language there, I think it's a really big sign of respect. Like, it shows that you appreciate the culture that you're experiencing now outside of your own country, and you want to learn about the people, you want to learn about the culture. I feel that that's a very respectful thing to do, rather than just anticipating everybody else out there to speak exactly like you.
hmm.
So let's go into the second question, and I think you're really going to appreciate this, because I did mention to you before we went on the air, I'm going to sprinkle a lot of bookish information, a lot of bookish questions in here. So here's my question: what was the first book that you ever read in English, and did you also read it in Spanish and try to compare and contrast the two with your overall feeling about it when you officially finished the book?
Okay, you're gonna be surprised about this, but my first book in English was not really a very complex one. It was like it showed pictures, like for example, tree, apple, oranges, box, and it had the word below it. So that's
Mhm.
how, like, it was my first book, and I remember it because it was the first thing that introduced me to like learning the sound in English. And I remember that because I was really small when I started learning the language, and I had to make a difference between how, for example, double O or the O alone sound in Spanish or sound in English, and there's a big difference. So I had to like first remember how the sound worked, and yeah, I started really with the basics, and the book was really really basic. Then I remember that maybe, do you know the Usborne classics?
I think so. Could you
Okay,
elaborate a little bit about that?
yeah, there are classics like, for example, Romeo and Juliet
Ah,
or Dickens, and they're adapted to for children. So you have
Oh,
different
wow.
levels. Yeah, you have the red level, which is I think the most basic level. You have the green level, and you have the the purple level. So I went like increasing my level as I started like becoming more fluent in English. But one of the first books that I remember reading in English with my dad every single night a bit was Romeo and Juliet, the Usborne classic.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's really, something that's very intriguing to me, because the fact that there are actually books out there that are trying to give, see, that's another thing that I'm sort of envious of. The fact that as a young person, you actually had the ability to learn a little bit about Shakespeare and read a little bit of Shakespeare, because when we're growing up as kids here, it's like we know Shakespeare because Shakespeare is such a pop culture icon. He's everywhere. But when do kids in America start really reading Shakespeare? If kids are passionate about Shakespeare, they'll start reading it on their own. But kids here mandatorily start reading Shakespeare in
In high
middle
school.
school and high school. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes middle school, but mostly high school. You're right. And the fact that something like this, which is such a cultural importance to all of literature, the fact that you're actually able to see something like that in a child-friendly format is, to me, that's just wonderful to know. That's wonderful to know that something like that exists out there in the world.
Hmm. I've never read it in Spanish, and I actually hate translations, so I haven't done that.
Someone in the comments just said that you'll have a lot of Shakespeare refs in Star Trek. That is absolutely right. I am actually a Star Trek fan, so I have seen that many times. But you even see things like Shakespeare references in the most simplest things, like a Looney Tunes cartoon or something like that, which is absolutely amazing. And one of my personal favorite things that I have in my book collection is there's an author out there named Ian Dosher, who is a massive Shakespeare fan, but he's also a Star Wars nut. So he made a book series called William Shakespeare's Star Wars, where he has taken so far all 8 Star Wars films outside of Rogue One and Solo, and he's turned the entire movie into Shakespeare plays.
Wow.
They are so, and they're funny to read, because it's just like just seeing some of the famous lines that are practically quotable to me, and just seeing them in like Shakespeare literature format is just so funny to me, and it's just so creative. And I talk about those books on my channel so much. You can find them on Amazon with no hesitation. Just type in William Shakespeare Star Wars or Google William Shakespeare Star Wars, and you can find it instantaneously. But that's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I, of course, have never read a book outside of English. And one of the other things that we'll get to later is the concept of books being written in English outside of other languages, but we'll get into that at some other point in time. So the third question that I want to ask you now is in regards to your channel, of course, and that is, what made you decide that you wanted your YouTube channel to be in English? Because as I said earlier, there are plenty of YouTubers on this platform who speak the language of their country in their channel. And there are so many communities in regards to language here on YouTube. I have experienced that myself when I was doing tags earlier in my YouTube career, and I saw the language tag or something like that. And that was where I was really opening up. Like, I found everything from Chinese to Greek to Norwegian to Spanish to French. They're all over. But what gave you the want to step out of your comfort zone and say, no, I want to do my channel in English?
Yeah, like you say, and something that actually not many people know, the Spanish booktube community is huge. So I totally could have made my channel in Spanish as well, and actually would have benefited me in this country. But the booktube that I started watching when I first discovered the community was in English. My favorite booktubers all spoke English. I didn't even know that the Spanish community existed until much later on, and I became obsessed with the booktube English community. I didn't like translations. I did not read Spanish books, basically because there are not many YA books that are written in Spanish originally. Like you may have translations, of course, and you may find those in the bookstores, in local bookstores, but you do not have authors that write YA in Spanish. You do not have Argentinian authors that write YA, or not many that I know of. And so the books that when I started reading a lot really interested me were written in English. So I naturally gravitated towards those and became obsessed with those authors, and later on with a community that in that language spoke about those books and recommended more of them. So I admired from point zero the people that made videos and that made me feel so passionate about reading and wanting to pick up new books. And at some point I wanted to do the same thing. So yeah, when I before, maybe a year or two before I actually started my channel, I tried filming and practicing doing a book haul, for example, and filmed it with my iPad. And I tried to do it in Spanish to test it out and see which of the two languages I'd end up choosing. But because, first of all, I do like English more than Spanish. I don't know. It's just maybe it's because the books that I read and have been so passionate about and that have changed me so much have been written in English. Maybe it's because of that, or I don't know. I just like the language more. I like how it sounds. I enjoy it much more than my own, and it's a weird thing to say, but it's honestly the truth. So when I started, and also since I've watched all of the BookTube that I've watched is in English, mostly. Maybe I follow only one or two booktubers that are from Argentina and that speak Spanish. But I was so accustomed to hearing people talking in English about books that when I tried filming my own video and testing out how I would do it in Spanish, it felt so weird, so out of place, and I was not connecting to it at all. And I was going to talk in Spanish about books that were in English. That just didn't really connect. So I decided to try it in English, and I felt much more comfortable. I loved it so much more. And I also wanted to be part of the English BookTube community, because in this community, there aren't that many people that speak Spanish. So I wouldn't be able to connect with them easily, or to have have constant conversations with them so that they could watch my videos and I could watch theirs. So the friends that I would make in the end would speak Spanish. And I felt more attracted to the BookTube community in English. So for all those reasons, that's why I decided to go ahead. And I did not speak, I was fluent, I was always good in English, but I had not practiced as much, and I was not as fluent as maybe I am now. So it did take practice. And before I started my channel, I had to do a lot of things to improve my accent, improve my vocabulary. And then when I finally did it, I did feel much more comfortable and did feel like I was going to be able to do it with no problem whatsoever.
That's fantastic. I mean, one of the few things that I would have to give you credit for is the fact of your English mastery, because statistically, English is the hardest language to learn. When I take a look at myself or anybody that is born into an English-speaking country, it just takes away so much hardship and frustration because the language comes naturally, so naturally. And when you take a look at how the English language is composed, you wonder how people who have English as their second language is able to master it. It's like the silent K, the way that an X is actually expressed in English in some various ways, the uses of things like a schwa. It's like, how can somebody learn this? Like, I just get so intrigued by this, because it's just such a confusing thing, because it's like, you see a word, there are languages out there where that word sounds exactly like how it's spelled. But when you take an English word like knife, it's like, how? How did they come up with the silent K? Who was the genius? And notice that's sarcastic. Who was the genius that came up with the concept of the silent K? How is it that a K can be silent? Like, where does that come from? You know, and this is a conversation that my friends and I, and even my siblings and I, joke about that all the time. It's like, how does that happen? And know that there are so many people out there who are trying to learn English. I wouldn't be surprised if that is a question that people ask all the time. Or like the word xylophone. If the word is xylophone, why doesn't it start with a Z? Why does it start with an X?
Yeah, I think that it has a lot to do with when you start learning the languages, because when you are younger and when you start from such a young age, it might come much easier to you. And also with how, maybe I don't know, how easy it comes to people to incorporate new languages. And in the comments, they're talking about having a trilingual brain and mixing up sometimes the words and sometimes the languages. And that happens to me all the time. I speak Spanish, and because I'm so accustomed to speaking English, sometimes I have to use English words to describe things that I want to say in my own language. And that happens a lot. So
Right.
that's another funny thing. But I don't think that, well, maybe it's because it's my experience and
True.
because I started from such a young age, but I don't think that English is that hard to learn in comparison to French or to German or to other languages like that. So I think it might be a personal thing, but yeah, it's languages are so crazy,
Yeah.
especially with what you were saying.
Yeah. I mean, I actually, for 12 years of my life, actually was actually forced in my school to learn and study what is actually the easiest, statistically the easiest language to learn in the entire world. And just in case all of you in the comments were curious about that, that language is Hebrew. Hebrew, once you learn how to, because all the letters sound like they're supposed to sound, and there's also strict vowel pronunciation. And by vowel, not like A-E-I-O-U, but there are these little dots and dashes that go
Mm.
under the letters, and they make those letters make a certain sound. Once you know how those vowels sound and the actual
It works
sound
for
of a
all
letter,
words.
all words, there
Yeah.
is no tricks, there's no difference. There's also there are also these dashes that go on top of only certain letters to make the ch sound, like in the name like Richard Nixon. There's a way to actually do that because a letter on its own does not sound like that, so you have to put that little dash.
Hmm.
So it's so simple, so simple. And there's also ways to, and crazily enough, that language is also gender specific, which is kind of interesting. There are specific words that you have to write in order for it to be male and female. I don't know how the world of political correctness would view the Hebrew language at this point in time because of the whole craziness that's happening with gender these days, but that's another story for another time. But anyway, that's why it's so simple. But
Yeah.
the funny part is, when you actually go to Israel, and I have been to Israel 17 times in my life, you don't even need to know Hebrew because everybody speaks English.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's like you literally, it's like if you're, when someone speaks to you in Hebrew and you can't seem to understand it, like if you go to like if you're going to a taxi cab there and they speak to you in Hebrew and you can't seem to get the words out, they go, "Where are you going?" And they say it so clearly. I'm like, okay, the guy knows English. That's the way it is. It's so, but again, that also goes to the point where, you know, I think it would be better if I actually learned the language rather than anticipating somebody speaking my language. That's goes back to what I said earlier in the conversation.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's funny.
I think English is not so much about learning. Yeah, it's about learning how certain letters sound and the vocals how they sound when you combine them different ways. But it's also about practice, because some words you have no idea why they sound like that, and they do. So
You're
it's about
absolutely right.
repetition and seeing them over and over again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So let's go into the fifth question, and I'm really enjoying the conversation. By the way, I've really been getting some amazing insight from you. This one's going to be a little bit more interesting, and I think this can really create a great conversation because I think everybody's excited to hear. You were fortunate enough to be a live panelist at BookNet Fest last year. So let's talk about you actually being on that panel, and you were actually being a speaker to a mostly English speaking audience. I mean, if it was, I believe that was in Florida, correct?
Yeah.
Right. So in Florida, there is a very big Spanish speaking population as well. So the fact that you actually were giving a live panel in America and speaking to a predominantly English audience, how did you feel actually about doing that? And the second question that we'll go into later is, I want to talk about you live streaming as well.
Okay. So when it came to BookNet Fest, I'm really comfortable speaking English, especially at that point. It was September. So it's been years since I started like trying to polish my English. So I didn't feel uncomfortable or nervous about having to speak in front of a huge audience because, first of all, maybe people don't even know that you're not a native speaker. And second of all, they will understand. So I didn't have to be nervous at all about anything. And I didn't feel nervous because I do feel comfortable speaking it. But also, what I felt actually nervous about was addressing people that I've been watching for ages and that I actually admire so much. That was what I was most nervous about, meeting them and having to like make an impression on people. I didn't know what it was going to turn out like. I didn't know if they were going to like me at all, but I knew that I did want them to like me because they are my biggest inspirations and the people that I've admired for so long. So that's the thing that I was most nervous about, not having to speak English, because that's something that I have incorporated a lot.
Yeah,
already.
absolutely. That's wonderful. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because when I've gone to BookCon 2 years in a row, and last year I remember I was standing like right near the entrance of the hall where all the panelists and all of the bookstores were actually selling books and stuff like that, and all the other cool stuff that was there. So I was standing in this one spot, and all of a sudden, like at the table right next to me, Sasha Alsberg and Tashopolis are standing like less than 10 feet. I'm standing 10 feet away from them. Now, I don't watch many of their videos, but it is hard to be a member of the BookTube community and not know who those two giants in the community are. But I was like, do I say hello? Do I say to them, I know who you are? Do you, my name is Steve. I have a channel on YouTube called The Lawn. I'm like, I didn't know what to do. Like, do I say something or do I just let them do their thing? You know, because you know, it's like when you know that there are two iconic booktubers, even if you don't watch their videos, you still have to give those people credit where credit is due and just at least say you do a great job. You know, even if I don't watch videos of certain people, I still feel that knowing who they are and knowing that they pretty much were the pioneers of this wonderful community, you have to at least say thank you very much. You know,
Yeah, but it's also balancing. In my case, when I met all those people at BookNet Fest, I not only wanted to go as a fan, I wanted to go as a friend, because that's what I'm looking for in this community more than anything else. So you do have to balance with what you say. You do have to balance between admiration and deep admiration, the deep admiration that you feel for them, but also approaching them as a normal human being, because they are like that. And when you do BookTube, when you do YouTube, numbers get so like distorted. You're not conscious of the amount of people that those numbers, that those views represent. You're not conscious of it at all. So the person that may have this huge audience, they may be accustomed to some things, but still they're a normal human being that do not have maybe the complete scope of how they influence other people and how many people they influence. So I do always want to approach these kinds of booktubers that have done so much for me as a human being before than anything else, and with admiration and with love and with care, but also to start a friendship.
Right. I can't disagree with you there. I mean, my BookCon stories are really funny because it's like I felt more comfortable just, you know, finding the people that I was watching. Like when it comes to the people that I watch, like I mentioned before we went on the air, my friend Pucks and Paperbacks, it's like when I actually met that YouTuber for the first time, it just all came natural. I was just saying, oh, it's so great to meet you in person. And we had a great conversation. Some of her other friends who I actually did watch the content, they actually came and we actually spoke. We had a wonderful conversation. And I remember when we were in a certain area, we were just talking and with a whole bunch of people, and right past us walked Katie Tastic, Pulling Bananas Books, and Jesse the Reader. And we all just like looked and they were like, nice. You know that.
And
That was really.
you're trying to control yourself.
Yeah, that's basically we all actually were as cool as cucumbers, as the famous expression goes. But it was like they just walked right past us, and we were like, "That's awesome." But when I was actually there, this is my first year at BookNet at BookCon. I was with my wife, of course, and one of the booktubers that I knew was going to be there. I don't know if you ever met him before or watched his channel, but Kevin, the Irish Reader, he
Yeah.
is. I saw him and I yelled his name out. I yelled, Kevin! And he turned around, and my wife said, I think you scared him. But he saw me and he knew who I was because he comments on my videos. We shook hands and we met up later on. We talked about DC comic books for like about 15 minutes. But the fact that I had no issue, like no filter, like I was overly confident I'm going to meet somebody that I know. I felt a little bit, it was funny that my wife said to him, I think you scared him.
Yeah, I feel such huge connections to everybody on this platform that I may, when I meet them at BookCon this year, I may cry when I meet half of them because it's so overwhelming and so exciting. Someone in the comments asked me, "Do you want to become a writer at some point? If yes, then in what language would you use?" Would you mind if I answer that quickly?
Oh, please. That's what the comments are for. I'm glad that
Okay.
I'm glad to see these comments. And before you answer that question, let me just pause for a minute because we've officially hit the half-hour mark. So just in case you guys are all new to the live stream, first of all, thank you once again for coming. I'm so glad to see such a vibrant comment section today. This video is going to get taken down after we go off the air, maybe in about an hour or so, just so I can edit and add an intro and outro. And then I will put it back up tomorrow morning, which is going to be January the 14th at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it'll always be here, and you can always watch it whenever you want, especially if you missed the live stream. So, Sophie, please answer the question.
So when I was much younger, I did want to become a writer, but at this point, I do not think that I will do it. I do love writing in English, not in Spanish. Yeah, I do like writing in Spanish as well. That's something that I do like to do. But if I ever became a writer, I would write in English. And I do not want to write fiction. That's not something that is really in my future at this point. But I do feel like writing would have to be part of something in my life, and maybe writing nonfiction or writing articles or essays. That's something that I love to do, especially when I'm debating. I prepare my debates because I go to a debate class and I love doing that. But when it's nonfiction, I like it more. And then I like consuming stories, but not writing them, not writing fiction. So I do not think I would become an author of stories. Maybe I would incorporate writing nonfiction in my life in some way. But yeah, I would write in English.
That's great. Well, listen, if that's something that you're going to be doing, then I wish you all the luck in the world. I think that knowing the type of person you are, I could definitely tell that your head is swimming with creative stories. And I'm hoping that one day you will get a book out there if you ever get a chance to do that. And just so you know, I will not ask you for an ARC. I will make sure that I pay for it because I want to make sure that you are successful. I did that with a very good friend of mine in the BookTube community. Her name is Sarah. Her channel is Sarah Ella. She has not made a video in a while, but she made the Unblemished trilogy. And I told her, do not send me any copies for free. I want to make sure that you make money. And I bought them all. So that's the way that I feel. That's what I feel a good friend really should do. But that's just me. Everybody else has their own opinions. I also am noticing that Rachel is in the chat. I'm so glad that she came. She is someone that I'm hoping to do some projects with in the future as well. She is wonderful. I love her channel. So
Rachel is amazing.
Yeah, she is wonderful. She is definitely someone who I respect so much because she really wants to make sure that there is a great, vibrant community, which is what I've been striving for as well. So here's a question that I want to ask you in regards to your channel. Now that your channel has taken off, and let me just tell you, I'm so glad that I was one of the first people that actually found you and supported you, because nothing warms my heart than seeing someone who I originally found who had like maybe 100, 200 subscribers, and then they've got thousands. knowing that I'm one of the few people that I helped start the fan base makes me very, very happy. So when your channel took off, what were your overall feelings about it? And did you have any neglect about the fact that you didn't actually do your channel in your native language?
Neglect as to regret it?
Meaning, like, did you say, maybe I should have done it in Spanish? I'm not exactly sure.
No, not at all. No, I love English. I'm sticking with it. It was just filming that video to practice in Spanish was just like a second thought to try to see if it maybe could be another option, but it was never an option. My first option was always to do it in English, and I do not regret it at all. I'm happy with it.
Great.
And yeah, when I started seeing my channel take off. Okay, can you repeat the question once more?
Like, how did you feel like when, especially because obviously we're talking about English being the second language, and the fact that you did your channel, you suddenly you're skyrocketing. Like, how did you overall feel about the fact that you actually are being this successful when your native language is not English? Like, how did you feel?
Okay. So I'm when I started my channel, I was never like, it's not like I said one day I will develop this and I will have my big audience and I will have my big channel, and at some point I will be up there and I will have like many friends in this community. I went in knowing that that was something that I wanted to do, but I of course didn't expect it to be so quickly. Like, I knew that because of how I would continue to improve myself and look at my content, evaluate everything, and always try to make it better, that I would make my content better and better with time and always be trying to improve, because that's something that I like doing. That's something that I'm good at doing. At some point I will have really amazing content and that I will have a huge community. But I didn't really expect to be at this point with having started my channel only 1 year ago, and
Wow.
having made so much impact and having so much friends and so much love from this community. Because they're subscribers, it's okay, numbers don't really matter, but what I'm focusing on is receiving so much love and having so many people that tell me every single day that they love my content, that they love watching my videos, that they appreciate my thoughts and hearing my reviews on books. That's what I wanted to strive for. That's what I wanted to create at some point, and I knew I was going to create it, but I just didn't understand. I had no idea that it would be this fast. And my reaction to it is just thank you. Thank you to everyone who supports me. This is what I've always wanted. This is what I've always wanted to create. This BookTube has been my dream for a long time. I knew I would get there eventually, but it's happened super fast, and that's just, I'm so grateful for it. And maybe you hear over and over again people saying, I had no idea how much grateful I would feel. I didn't, like, people that are so thankful as well and that thank their audience always say, I had no idea how amazing this would feel. And you hear it over and over again, and you say, well, if it happens to me, I will know how it feels. But you don't. You actually don't. When it happens to you, and when you feel all this love, it's like nothing that you've ever felt before. And what I feel is just gratefulness. So much gratefulness for everyone, because everyone has truly given me a place in this community. Everyone has really given me the place to listen to me and to let me express my thoughts. Everyone has been so respectful, no hate, always friendship, always love, and it's the most incredible thing. So what I feel is just gratefulness, pure gratefulness.
Yeah, and that's I will tell you that that's beautiful to hear. I'm so, and like I said, it's like I may have been doing YouTube's content for going on 9 years now, and am I surprised that I haven't become, a big YouTuber of PewDiePie proportions? Not surprised in the slightest. I mean, I know that, I don't know if I'm right or if I'm wrong about this, but I don't know. It's because I don't know what it is about me that doesn't allow the channel to blow up as big as other people out there. I mean, it could be a various bunch of things, but for me, I agree with you. It's quality over quantity most of the numbers really don't matter. But to a certain degree, I could disagree because, especially when you know that your overall mission, besides being a content creator, is to create a positive environment, to network with others, to make the small voices that you love in the community get louder. You wish that your own voice was reaching more people because you are trying to spread the word about others in your respective community.
Yeah, I'm not saying that numbers don't matter. Numbers do matter to everyone and they matter to me. But when it comes to what I feel most strongly about, it's the love that I get and the friendships that I've made, and not only the people that have subscribed. That's what I meant.
Right. I know exactly. I definitely got that. I mean, it's just because of the fact that I really just,
you want to create a voice.
Yeah, I really want, and again, it's like, if you didn't have the subscribers that you had right now and I was still watching your channel, oh, believe me, pardon my French, I would be promoting the fuck out of your channel because I love your passion. I love what you do because I appreciate the fact that you have no shame in who you are and what you say, regardless of how you wonder how people are going to feel. And I'm the same way. If I like something, I go balls to the wall, head over heels over it. If I don't like something, I will let people know. But one of the few things that I do like to do, like the live stream here, this is not just about me interviewing a YouTuber. This is me telling my subscribers, listen to this YouTuber, check this YouTuber out. She's wonderful. You know, that's the overall point of the live stream. It's not just having a great conversation. It's about letting people know about somebody else in the community. That's why I always say we're going to discuss next time another great topic and have another great YouTuber to discuss it with, because that's the main focus. The motivational moments that I do, when I do the updates and I talk about what's going on in my life, and I try to keep encouraging people to keep doing what they're doing and not be afraid to be who they are. Not only am I showing the fact that I'm trying to be real and genuine, but I'm trying to tell all these people out there, don't stop being you and don't stop being genuine. I mean, when I see somebody post a video that says, and it's always in the thumbnail, it's like, what do you want to see? Like, what do you want my channel to see? Well, I always say the same thing. If that's going to be a video that you make, then you've officially lost your channel to the people. It's no longer yours. And I feel that if you're not making the content that you want, your channel is never going to be something that you truly love.
Yeah.
That's
one thing that I always pay attention, that is the most important thing to me, is that I'm proud of every single video that I post. If I'm not proud of it, I'm erasing it. Like, I'm not even gonna post it, because it bothers me so much to have, just to note that there is a video that I'm not completely satisfied with. And of course, when I look back, my videos, when I first started my channel, the videos now are much better and much more polished. But at that point, when I published them, I was super proud of them. And right now I am proud of them as well, because they show how I've grown and evolved and improved.
Right. And I could say the same thing about my own channel as well. It's like when I spend the time like reading a new book that I never read before, or watching a classic movie that I never watched before. Like, I've been watching some of my more recent videos. Like I mentioned to you before we went on the air, I talked about how I made my review for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and how I thought that it was not a great movie in my eyes. But what made me so proud was not the fact that I said I didn't like the movie, but the case that I presented, the way that I was respectful, and the fact that I gave my honest perspective and really tried to show everything that encompassed the film. Like, I wanted to show the positive and what I liked about it, but I also wanted to show the negative and why I didn't like it. I wanted to make sure that my case was presented and presented properly. And just the way that I spoke and the way that I gave the case, I felt proud knowing that at the end of the day, people are going to say, okay, he didn't like it. and that's fine. But I still think the movie is great. That's the message. That's the message.
Yeah. One of the videos I'm most proud about right now is my video on worst books of 2018, because I had a ton of unpopular opinions in that video, and I was actually scared. I was scared of doing that video because I was afraid that people may misinterpret what I was trying to convey. But I made that video and explained everything so well, and I was so satisfied that I was able to put it all out and explain it exactly as I wanted to explain it. And it was really well received. A lot of people really enjoyed it, and I just look back at that video and I'm so proud that I was able to do it. I was able to express all of my thoughts as I wanted to, and also that I surpassed that fear and told myself, yeah, you are afraid of putting that thought out there, but it doesn't matter because this channel is about transparency and this channel is about truth, so you will have to do it. And I was able to surpass that fear, and I was able to do it correctly, and I'm 100% satisfied with that video, and I'm super proud of it as well.
Bravo, bravo. I will definitely throw out one of my personal favorite things from one of your videos. I can't remember exactly which tag it was, but I remember that one of the questions was, give us your favorite Harry Potter book. And the words that come out of your mouth, it's just the way that you say it, it was the most hilarious thing I ever saw. I was like, how dare you? This tag is officially canceled. I laughed so hard when you did that. I loved that so much. And it's so funny because I did a Harry Potter live stream here on Sunday Sit Down last year, and I actually did ask the question, what's your most favorite Harry Potter book and what's your least favorite Harry Potter book? And she was like, oh, do I have to choose? And I was like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. But no, that was one of my favorite things that you ever did in your videos. I always go back to that video because like that just shows you how dedicated I am to some of the people that I watch. It's like if there's a video that I really love from a YouTuber, I will watch that video God knows how many times. I still watch a video from a YouTuber who doesn't produce content anymore. His name is Ash. His show is called The Captain Vitus Show, but he 5 years ago made a hilarious review of the recent Fantastic Four movie, and I still can't stop watching that video because it's just that funny. I actually presented it in one of my 10 for 12s last year, which was my 10 favorite YouTube videos, and they were all YouTube videos from some of my favorite content creators that I actually grew with while they were also making their channel. So some of my personal favorites. So the sixth question is going to be interesting, and I don't really know where this one is going to go, but we're going to give it a shot. And that is, we always talk about so much English entertainment being translated into different languages. But what I want to know is what are us native English speakers missing? Are there any Argentinian authors or films or music out there that you feel that people from other countries and other cultures should know? Like, I'm going to make it more simpler. Is there an Argentinian book series, or just book in general, that is equivalent to something like Harry Potter or the Lunar Chronicles or Chronicles of Narnia or the Hunger Games? Is there something out there that we as Americans and just native English speakers are not aware of that we should be?
Okay, let me see. Well, of course, okay, something that you are not aware of. There are many Argentinian authors like Jorge Luis Borges that people in other countries, even in America, are aware of. But when it comes to YA and books, I don't read in Spanish anymore. I only read in English. But when I was younger, I did read in Spanish, and for school as well, of course. And one book that I always recommend when people ask me, well, what books in Spanish written by Argentinian authors would you recommend? One of them is, it's not for young audiences. It's for adults, and it's also for teenagers. It's called Los vecinos mueren en las novelas.
Okay.
And I think it was written by Julio Aguirre. And that book I thought it was masterful because it was like it wove in a story within a story within a story, but
Oh.
it created such an ambiguous, it was such an ambiguous ending. It manipulated my emotions so well. I read it for school, actually. It was one of the best books that I've ever read at school, and I highly recommend it. But yeah, when it comes to YA, when it comes to something that is comparable to Harry Potter or I don't know, one of the big names out there, the Hunger Games, there's just nothing that I really know of, and nothing that I would say compares to that.
You see, because to a certain degree, I sort of feel upset about that
Yeah.
because, you
Yeah, me
know,
too.
because you want to know really what it is. It's because, especially when it comes to something like Harry Potter, I mean, like, look, when it became extremely popular, what happened? It got translated into hundreds of different languages. So basically, there you go. The story's officially taken. You can't, like, all the creativity is gone. I see. That's one of the few things that I don't like about sometimes, like, native English speaking books and stuff like that, because, like, the fact that we produce it and the fact that it gets immediately dispersed and translated, I feel that it sort of gives less of an opportunity to non-English authors or non-English directors to actually get their vision, get their stories out there. I mean, granted, there are some, I'll just give some examples in the film industry that did actually manage to get out there and not just do things in their own native language, but also manage to do English speaking films, because especially when it comes to the world of Latin America, one of the most praised film directors is Guillermo del Toro. And so many film appreciators adored Pan's Labyrinth, which is a wonderful film. But what happened, Guillermo del Toro then went on to direct the two Hellboy films, which are comic book films. He almost directed the Hobbit trilogy. He just won the Best Director Academy Award for The Shape of Water. So there are opportunities for people to show their visions in their native language, because if there's one thing that I could say about Guillermo del Toro, is the fact that he gave us such unique visions of fantasy, and the fact that with America or the UK or all those ideas that could have been given, he still managed to do something different. And I applaud him for that. It's just a pity that I wonder if authors from different countries who don't speak English, do they feel that their hopes and dreams are shot down because all the English speaking countries got to it first, and they feel that they don't have an opportunity to share their vision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm like, as involved I am with my culture, when it comes to books, I am much more connected to the English industry, with the American and the UK industry of books. But I think that if you asked maybe another of my an Argentinian booktuber that has her channel in Spanish, if you asked her if there are any actual novels written by Argentinian people that are as big as Harry Potter, she would not. I don't think she would be able to tell you about any of those either. And it's sad. It's a bit sad. But all of the books that are like sensational in our country are translations from English stories.
Mhm. I mean, do you actually know, and I'm wondering if anybody in the comments would know, do you know what was one of the very first mainstream exposures of America to the Latin American culture, like Mexico and and Brazil and Argentina? Do you know?
Come again? How? What?
Do you know what was one of the first major mainstream exposures of Latin American culture to the United States?
Oh no, I have no idea.
It was from Walt Disney. Walt
Oh really?
Disney in the
Oh
1940s created two package films called Saludos Amigos and The Three Caballeros.
wow.
And it was such an interesting thing because it wasn't just the sake of bringing this culture to the United States in the 1940s. It was also to create a friendship between the Latin American culture, because the United States was afraid that they would side with the Axis of Power during World War II. So they wanted to create a friendship and rather not create wars. So the fact that the Walt Disney Company went down to these countries and found culture from countries like Argentina and Brazil and Peru, it was a very interesting landmark in American culture. And ever since then, you know, look at where we are now. Spanish culture, Brazilian culture, it's predominant in the United States now. And almost practically the entire country embraces it, which is wonderful. So the final question that I want to leave you is, I think it pretty much flows into the last question that I asked you, and that is, because I think you already answered the question, and I was saying, like, what Argentinian author or book saga would you like to see translated into English so it can receive a larger audience?
Okay, well, definitely Los vecinos mueren las novelas by Sergio Aguirre. And also, I loved Norma Huidobro, particularly Octubre un Crimen is the name of the book. And Elsa Bornemann. I think that those three authors are for children as well, and Sergio Aguirre is for adults. And those books and all of their books that they've written were really amazing and really helped shape me as a young kid, especially because they're all mystery and also horror novels. They were really interesting to see, and they offered, like, there was this short story that Elsa Bornemann wrote, which was called Socorro 10, and I was like maybe 8-9 years old when I read that, and it blew my mind, and it's stuck on my mind forever now because it was so impactful, and it was so interesting, so well done, and so creative, and I think that the world should be able to read it as well in English.
That is great. What are the titles of the books that you mentioned? How would you translate them into English? I would just like to know what their English names would be. I'm just curious.
Okay, Socorro 10, it's the name of the girl, but
okay,
it's
I figured that out.
Yeah, well, yeah, you would have to translate it even if it's her name, but you would say, I'm trying to the perfect word to translate it. Well, it's like Socorro is like rescue or help. So it's like Rescue 10, that would be her name. But that book was about a girl who had a distortion in her brain, and instead of seeing human flesh, she was only able to see like through the bodies and was only able to see the bones of people. So she got a surgery done, and after the surgery, she was able to see like properly how everyone else sees. And she was scared out of her mind because she was suddenly able to see the way that everyone else does, but something was not normal for her. So that was the first book. It's Help or Rescue 10. That would be the translation, but it's her name, Socorro 10. Then there's Octubre un Crimen, and that would be like a crime in October. The October crime. That would be a good translation, I guess.
That would be a title that people would be looking at. That's for certain.
Yeah. It sounds great. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, it does.
It's compelling. Yeah, I know. It was a great story. And then, bueno, los vecinos mueren en las novelas. Neighbors die in novels, I guess. Or all neighbors die in novels.
Wow. Those are some very interesting titles.
I know.
I really like that. That definitely is those are definitely titles that average readers here would go into Barnes and Noble and they'd see the title and like, what's this about? As long as there's a good cover to go with it. I know they say don't judge the book by its cover, but when you take a look at the BookTube community, they're like, look at this beautiful cover.
but we're not only judging, we're admiring the beautiful covers.
Absolutely. That's what it is all about. And someone actually in the comments did mention Don Quixote, and I definitely will agree that is definitely some exposure in American culture, but I was referring more so to something that was seen by everybody else, because unfortunately, not everybody does want to pick up a book unless they're forced to read it for school. Us, like you and me and other members of the community, we love to read, but not everybody still loves to read as much as some of us. But anyway, we are officially about to wrap it up because we are officially reaching the top of the hour. So I have to say this was such a wonderful kickoff to the second season of Sunday Sit Downs. It was such a great conversation. You guys in the comments, you rock. Such great things to be said. So many great people that I've never seen before. I hope that you will all come to the next episode. And if you guys want, you're more than welcome to check out my channel and see my content. I talk about everything in popular culture, books included. If you guys came here because of Sophie, I don't even need to mention what Sophie's channel is about. You know her, you love her, and I'm glad that she's here. But what I do want to say once again is don't forget that this video will be taken down and be posted back up with an intro and outro on Monday, the 14th of January at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So once again, Sophie, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your Sunday to sit down and have a conversation with me. And I am looking forward to the next.
Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, you're very welcome. You are very welcome. It was an absolute pleasure. So don't forget, everybody, I am Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and I will be back very, very soon with another great topic to discuss, but more importantly, another wonderful YouTuber to discuss it with. Take care, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.